Today we are here to talk about Director Composer, and this video is going to be a little bit different because it's going to be a mix of screen capture and picture-in-picture and stuff like that, because visual aids will help quite a bit. So what is Director Composer? Director Composer is a MIDI interface that allows you to program things a lot easier than by hand. And let me give you an example of that. So normally when you add a light of some sorts to your DMX, what you end up doing is having some sort of setup like this, right? So you have your par or whatever like this and your DMX address. And if you go look at our video on DMX fixtures, you will see how all of that works and how to set it up, right? But normally when you need to set up stuff and run them and program them, you basically do it like this. You sit there and you do your animations, and you do whatever you need to do, you know, set up your dimmers, mix your colors, things of that nature. But if you have a lot of lights or some very complicated lights, it helps to have something that gives you a more finer control over said lights. So I will show you an example here of how the Director Composer works, and this is the Director Composer right here. This is the guy. This is it. Now, to really take full advantage of this, you need a Director Connect as well that hooks directly into your computer. And to turn that on, once it's connected, this will be grayed out down here. And otherwise, if it is connected, it'll be here. So you hit this, and that gives me live control over everything here, as you can see. So these buttons here that are lit up on the top, these all are your outputs. That is all of these. And I can toggle those on and off. You can see there that when I push that, it turns yellow, which means it's on. And when I do that, it is off. If I run a cursor over it like this, it turns yellow, which means it is on, and red when it is off. If I lock it, it's green, so it can't be recorded. So this gives you some visual interface of things and how they work. These down here are sliders. These are how you control your lighting and the servos and things like that. Anything that uses this waveform kind of interface here like that. And if you want to see it working in real time, you can turn on Virtual Console. And so you can watch as I do this. You see these all move in tandem with that. So if you need to dial in a certain brightness or something like that, you sit there and go, okay, 76 is what I need, you know, or 22 or whatever like that. If you want to turn it off so it can't be interfaced with, you use this button here. This is the lock, shift, engage button here, so that you can do that, and that turns the sliders on and off like that. So you can see how that works there. And later on, I'll show you how to hop banks, right? Because there are button banks. So if you have more than these, you can shift that around. If you have more than 8 of these slider controls, this will allow you to also jump around with that, but that's a little bit down the line. So what's cool about this is I can control everything from here. I don't actually have to do anything. I can start the playback all the way back at the beginning, like that. It just jumped back there. And I hit play and pause and go back. And in this case, record. If I hit record like this, it starts recording. And now I do my animations. And you see on the thing, the animations are happening live, just like this. And then I stop. And I can either go back to the start and play them, or I can undo everything I just did. So you're able to sit here and program everything from this board without touching your mouse or your keyboard. So you can just sit there in the dark in your room, messing with it as you see fit. Matter of fact, I have a little bit of footage, which I'll show you here, of me doing just that in a recent room build. So that's what it kind of looks like when I'm recording live in a room. It was a little dark, kind of hard to tell what was going on. So I'm going to show you in a little more controlled environment what it looks like when I use Director Composer here. Now, obviously, you can see I have my 5 dimmer switches. I got the master dimmer, the red, the green, the blue, and the strobe set up here on Director. I've also imported a sound effect of thunder so you can see how things are going to work. And of course, we want to make sure that the master dimmer is all the way up. Otherwise, the light will do nothing. If that's all the way down, the lights do absolutely nothing. So make sure that is up. And so now, again, I don't have to touch the keyboard or the mouse. All I have to do is hit record, and you'll hear the sound effect, and you can see the lights happening in real time. And then boom, and I could go back to the start. I can play it back. And if I don't like it, I can just undo it and do it again. And it is so nice to have a fine control, right? I can be very precise with the colors and the mixes and things like that. If I want to have just 2 colors, do something like this, I can just hit these 2 colors to flash and do that. I could technically do that with the dimmer. I could get these to a certain color. Like, let's say I wanted like a purple like this. Then I could come here with the master dimmer and have the dimmer do that as well, but you don't get as much color fade, obviously, things like that. So it's great if you have a whole bunch of pars or things like that hooked up that are very simple, LED strips, things like that, single color, anything that can dim like that. And this is pretty okay for that. Like it can be a little overkill depending on what you need it to do. Off and on, not that big a deal. But what if you have something a little more of a complicated fixture? So this is a moving light here. It has a moving head. It's got a bunch of different stuff. It's got horizontal and vertical movement, the speed at which it moves, the dim, the strobe, the color, the pattern, the motor, all this stuff, right? And this is just the 11-channel version. You can set up 13 channels to give you even finer control over everything, right? But as you can see here, this is a lot. There's a lot of channels on this one thing here. And if you look here on the board, I only have 8 channels here. So how do you deal with that? Well, it's very simple. These buttons here are for your slider banks. So if you watch, when I push this button, that's slider bank 1 that we're in. But if I hit this, boom, slider bank 2. This gives us our other 3 buttons here, other 3 sliders like this, and I can go back like this. So you see when those do that, then you can decide which is which. Now, obviously some of these I'm not going to use, like I'm not going to use the strobe function, so I'm going to lock that off so I don't have to deal with it. That's just gone, right? Number 11 there, we're going to turn off number 11 because I'm not going to use it in this demonstration. And as you can see on the screen, those turn green, which means they're locked like that. So now let me show you kind of how these would come in very handy. So normally what you would do is you would record some of this stuff one at a time, okay? So let me give you an example of that. So if you needed this to be at a certain, let's bring up the dimmer real quick. Hold on a second. So you can see there is the dimmer like that on the device. That should be, oh, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong bank. There we go. So there's the dimmer. That means my light now comes up. I will choose my color, which is 6 right here. I'm going to choose a blue, maybe a gold. There we go, like that. And then I'm going to leave pattern and everything else alone. So if let's say you're in a room where you needed a light to go from one place and move to another to show a clue or something like that, or something has happened, right? To give focus onto something else. And the way you would kind of do that is you could come into here like this and kind of set this and kind of dial it in and things like that. But what's nice about this is I can sit here and very easily sit there and dial this in and be, okay, I want this to go here like this. So I know that I want this at, let's say, if I go to my virtual console, I'm like, okay, that is going to be at 70. Let's see, that's 60, right? So then I would mess with my vertical and I would do this and I'd go, okay, I want that to be at 98, like that, right? So I know that I can set that as my end point, like this, right? So there's my end point. So then what I can do is I can go over here and set that in my max values. So I'll set this to 60, like this. Yes, I would like to lower that. And I actually don't remember what that number was. Hold on a second. That was 78, like that. Yep, so I would set this to 78, like that. There we go. So now what that means is this animation will, when I'm recording, can only go to that spot, right? So as you can see here, I'm doing this, and it is going to end at that spot. That is where it will always end when I'm doing my animations, okay? So that means that I can sit here and I can mess with this, have it move around, doing weird stuff, have it doing these things like it's searching for something, and then finally dial it in, whoop, right up there to that place like that. And obviously it's kind of hard to see that on the camera, but you get the idea. So this moves around and it goes where I want and it ends there. Now, obviously, if you just want to do weird things, you can sit here and just have it do all sorts of wacky stuff like that. But I have very complete control over the animation of this light, how I want it to go and where I want it to go. And again, if I was doing this as part of something like this, I would hit record and then have the lightning or whatever happen and have this end there. And then there it is. Now, what you do is once you get this animation dialed in, you lock it. Boom. That's locked. Because if I was to hit record, if I go back to the start and hit record again, let me show you what I mean. If I do this and I hit record, it overwrites everything I just did right there. It all gets erased, right? Which is not good like that. So by locking this, I can get that dialed in where I want it and then focus on the other animations, right? So if I go here, now let's say I want the dimmer to do stuff, right? So now I would hit record. So let's say we're here. And now, as this animates, I would have the dimmer going up and off and on like that. I get done. That is now locked. I would get that where I want it. It's fine. I would lock my dimmer right there. And of course, you can dial in the speed for where you want this to happen here. We'll go back to start and we'll play. So I can kind of mess with my speed a little bit. Or actually, I'll take that back. I would have to be recording for it to mess with that, but which I will do right now. So let's record right here, like that. And now that slows down real slow and then goes right there. So you can see, again, that's exactly what we do. We hit play, we watch the animation happen, it slows down, and it picks back up again and goes back to the thing. So it's a very easy kind of thing to manipulate. And again, when you have lots of lights, you're able to have all these things happening and control different channels and different things like that to give you this very fine control. Now let's look at some of the other options you can do with like lighting and things like that and patterns and stuff. So now, as you can see here, and I've switched over to some of the more complicated lighting here on the thing. Now, one thing you'll notice is I'm kind of keeping this moving here like this, because if you let it sit for too long, like you just let it sit, it goes back into a rest mode, an ambient state. It's the same thing that happens with the Virtual Console if you do the same thing. If I'm sitting here messing with the Virtual Console, it will eventually time out and go back to where it should be, because that's essentially, this is an extension of that, just easier to control, right? So that's kind of, just so you know, in case that's happening to you, that's by design like that. So that way you kind of start from zero, fresh. So anyway, using this, you can see that I have messing with the dimmer and stuff like that, and I've done a pattern, right? And so the way you do that in a light like this is I would go to my bank, my slider bank 2, like this, and this gives me, if you go down here, this is where motor and color and stuff like that is, right? So color here would be number 9, and if you watch, let's see here, so this should be 8, this would be 9. You can see that that is changing from the white to the 7 color, and this, depending on what color you've set in the previous color thing, it changes that, right? And then we also have some other effects here. So, but I want to show you these other effects like this. So that is just the color by itself. I can make this spin very fast. I can make it spin the other direction. I can make it go away, just like that. The other thing also is I can change the patterns. So let's say you wanted to have patterns change depending on what is happening in your room with the little built-in gobos here, right? So you could program via DMX to cycle through these shapes. Like there's some stars that's wobbling. Let me turn off the wobble there. That is the wrong one. Where's the wobble? Oh, wait, it's down. We're too far up. There we go. So you can see here, you got circles, you got flowers. So you could have these shapes cycling around and different colors, right? So you could control that via something like this. And obviously, again, this is simpler stuff, but once you integrate it all together, right? So let's say you want the light to be moving around, you want the shapes and colors to be changing and things like that. This device comes in very handy for things like that. Now, the sliders are not the only thing it controls, right? That's why these buttons here are like this. If I had more outputs on an I/O expander, these would be lit as well. And so these also allow me to control my outputs up here, right? So again, with the thunder sound effect, if I had some lights that needed to flicker or something to happen that was not dimmable, so it wouldn't be operated with these, it'd be operated with these, I could do the exact same thing. So if you watch, we'll hit record. Just pushing these buttons like this, and then there you go. Those are done. Now, if you're like, okay, I like the way these look and these look, I would sit here and I would lock those. So those cannot be re-recorded, right? And now I would go back and I could do the same thing, but just with these buttons. Now I would know I can only hit these, because if I did hit these, it does nothing. Like that, record, done. Another thing I will say is if you're doing like smaller spaces here on this, one thing that'll help, because what'll happen is if you're recording, like if I hit record from here, you notice how it pushes the timeline indicator over like that. And sometimes that can mess you up if you're not paying attention. So one thing I recommend is to right click this and enable a fixed length. That way when this gets here, it will stop with the recording, right? So if I record from this position, it stops right there. Right? So back to start. And when I play it back, you can see these are blinking on the console. And if you had lights hooked to it, you would see them blinking as well. So just keep that in mind, that this is for all your outputs, analog and digital. So you don't need to have the Director Connect to be able to interface with the Director Composer. And there's a couple things. When it's plugged in, you can still do all the recording and everything like that. You just don't get the live visual feedback that you would normally get with a Director Connect here, right? But the other thing that you'll get when you plug it in is you'll get this Director Composer Help. This will come up and this will tell you how it works and what to do with it here. Just kind of a refresher of what each button does and everything like that. The other thing you'll notice here is manual addressing. It's kind of like how DMX lays out its manual addresses. You can also choose what goes where into which bank. Generally, there's no reason to do that because it'll just kind of confuse you. But you may have a reason for doing it in case you want certain things on certain sliders, right? So to access that, you right-click anywhere in one of these channels. So let's say horizontal, like this. You go down to Director Compose, you click. It becomes a little flyout menu, and you can see here what's where, right? So it's showing me bank 1, bank 2. It's showing me what here. Like, so it's showing me that all in bank 1 is all these things. Everything in bank 2 is these things right here, like that. And right there, it's showing me that this is currently at that. Now, if I want, I can right-click on this and disable automatic layout, right? So I have to actually go out of that again, and so we go back into it like this, Director Composer. Now you'll see this is no longer checked, and I can clear the bank. Like I could completely clear out what everything is assigned to and just get rid of it, and then redo everything, right? So if I say clear slider bank 1, boom, like that, I go back into Director Composer, and if I look at the bank, sorry, let me do that, because you have to exit out of it to do that. So you'll see here that there's nothing there, but the slider's here, right? So that is here, like this. So now, if I wanted to say I wanted to put the horizontal here, I could go to bank 1, assign that to slider 2 for some weird reason if I wanted to do that, right? So now if I go here, again, for some reason you have to exit out of the menu completely. Hopefully that gets fixed. And there it is, slider 2, just like that. Now, if you start doing this and you get confused and you decide you don't like it, you just go back to use automatic layout. And then when you re-enter it, everything is back the way it was before, like that. So these are just some little things that are important to know in case you're ever trying to figure out what's where or need to assign something to somewhere else. You can do that. Now, earlier I mentioned this is also able to control servos, right? So if you're doing some robotic type stuff or need some finer control and want to do like multiple servo things happening at once, this can also do that. So here I have a servo set up, and as you can see, on the director here, I've set it at 128, which is usually, depending on the servo, the middle point, right? It's kind of just the 0, if you will, for servos. And so what I'm able to do, again, is to move this. I can do this like that. I can control the servo and have it do animations and things like that. But if I leave it alone, it will eventually default back to where I have it sitting here, which is 128, right? Like that. So to set up something like this, I will show you real quick. When you're setting up your device, in this case, a FlexMax 2, make sure you click Use Servos. Otherwise, you won't get this interface here. This will not pop up. And of course, you can choose if some of these are dimmable. Here, you can see this was the old way of doing it. He's updated it recently. So you can also control the pulse width of various LEDs and 12-volt bulbs and dimmable bulbs and stuff like that. So if you need those things, make sure you do them in the setup here, but obviously you can just replace your controller if you need to, like that. So just make sure you've done that. So one more time, if I need to control this, I can do this. And I can record this doing its thing. Oh, actually, sorry, let me set that back at the beginning there because the head was at the end. We'll do that again. Record. You can see that moves around, does what I want, gets to the end. Boom. And then I start, and I will play like that. So the thing will animate how I told it to, like that, and then stop. In this case, this servo is a little wonky due to me having cut a piece of it off, but this gives you the idea of what this can do and how to manipulate it. So I hope you have learned something about this, and I hope you get one and play with it. It's a really fun thing, and it'll help unlock more lighting options and cool things you can do in a room, because we do find lighting tends to be fairly ignored in a lot of escape rooms, and it's one of the more important things, especially for feedback and theatrical types of immersions. So there you go.